Welcome back, crew. It's a bit late, but we are wrapping up our December game of the month, the Fate Core System by Evil Hat Productions, with our review of the system. And if it's your first time here, if it's been a little while, what we do is each month we pick a different tabletop RPG and we spend the whole month diving into it, going over our first impressions, how to build a character, core mechanics of the system, and finally, a live actual play followed by what we're doing today, a review of the system. So, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at our roses, things we enjoyed for the Fate Core system, thorns, things that may not have clicked with us, as well as buds, things we're excited for the future with this system. And one nice thing too that we're adding with it is we're going to be kind of highlighting what type of player, what type of table this system would work best for. I think that's something that's going to be going forward for our new reviews, and I think it's just really important to tabletop RPGs in general because there's so many of them. Like there's hundreds of different RPGs out there, and it can be hard to find the one that fits for you. So I'm going to call that out up top and kind of what I think the system's best table would be, and that way you can kind of take a look at it and see if it fits you and your table. So let's dive right in. Let's start too with who I think this system would be best for. This is a narrative system, narrative generalist system. So what that means is it's kind of a system designed more from the narrative side, so the conversation between the game master and players to build out the fiction, with the mechanics playing a smaller supporting role that's kind of quick and easy to manage and doesn't really interrupt the flow of the story. And on the generalist side, it's a system that is made to be tweaked by the game master and the players to fit numerous different genres, story types, and able to kind of be played from a plethora of things from superheroes like we did to war stories to fantasy, kind of across the board with just tweaks by the game master and players as they build in. So with that said, I think the type of players this will work best for is a table that is kind of comfortable, likes narrative games, likes kind of building the fiction out together, likes to be able to do cool things with the mechanics with the fiction, but the mechanics themselves aren't too or are very easy to implement, don't really kind of interrupt that flow. Along with that, they're comfortable tailoring the system to kind of fit the story they're looking to tell. They're not really kind of put off by that collaborative work. They're really able to eager to dive into it. Alongside that, I'll put too its narrative players that may not be as much of a fan with as the application style that typically exists in narrative games, where you're likely on a roll, whether you roll a success or a failure, there's likely going to be complications with it that progress the story. This fate system doesn't bring that in, so it's be players that just may not want that, may want a different style of play. So with that said, let's dive into the roses and kind of things I liked about the system. And one of the first, and if you watch the live actual play or even the mechanics video that we did, you'll probably guess it. I really enjoyed the create advantage system as well as aspects in general. Uh, I think the create advantage system, it's just a really cool piece to be able to tie in a mechanical way to do what players often has to do, and find kind of which is basically interact with the environment, interact with the story in a kind of a novel way that creates an advantage for them, their party, themselves, kind of whatever is going on, or even hampers the enemy that they're going up against. And I think the creative advantage did that in a great way that's easy to implement, keeps the narrative flowing, allows you to just really kind of just invoke whatever genre you're playing. And we played in superheroes with ours, so we were able to kind of use our powers in novel ways that just affected the environment, gave those bonuses, and just really made us feel like though we're bringing that fiction to life. And I think that Creative Advantage is a really good example of bringing that into a narrative system. I like it. I hope more games do something similar to that because providing that clear mechanical guidance just really helps live out that fiction in the narrative. So really cool on that side. Also, like the aspects too, just in general, between having both your character aspects, which you can invoke, as well as like the environmental, the situational aspects, and the game aspects. It's one of those ones that our game master, shout out to Spirit, did a great job of kind of making a whiteboard with it, like a virtual whiteboard, I should say. But it's one of those that I think it's just be fun to play out in person as well, where you can kind of have like note cards, kind of see all the different advantages lined up right in front of you, and kind of get a good feel for that. I really enjoyed it with I think the accelerated version of Fate is what I played at Gen Con last year. It was just cool seeing them laid out. But even if you're doing virtual, the whiteboard worked perfectly for us as well. Because it's just one of those ones you can kind of see everything that everybody's contributing, everything that's kind of building up the story all in one spot and kind of see how that plays with the kind of the narrative and the mechanics of the system. So another thing I really enjoyed, huge rose there. Another big kind of rose on this side is the dice system is very quick and easy. It's 46 plus whatever skill you're rolling, and then if you can invoke any aspects to give yourself a bonus, is one of those ones that doesn't really take too long to pick up if you're a new player. It doesn't take too long to resolve. They do have their own custom dice, but it's one of those ones you can easily just use a d6 and just remember kind of what each number corresponds to. It's quick and easy to kind of implement and resolve those dice rolls, and one that kind of fits into the narrative first style of it. And one of the big things I'll put on this one, this is the rose to me, and it's one I kind of go either way on it, but it's one I really enjoyed. I think some people may enjoy it too. But the Fate system is one of the few narrative systems that doesn't employ the complication loop, I'll call it. And what that means is like a lot of systems will pick on powered by the apocalypse, where you'll roll, and even if you get a success, a lot of times, unless you get that six or that kind of that perfect success, a lot of times you have success with complications, and you can kind of get into that complication loop where either it kind of feels like anything that you do kind of sometimes will be the narrative will kind of either come back with you with the complication, or sometimes your player makes some type, or your character in the game makes some type of mistake. So some people like it, and some people just may not click with them for. So I think that's a rose for this system is that it doesn't have that complication loop. So if you are looking for a narrative system without that, Fate will be a great option for you, because Fate's really like the only major one I can think of, at least offhand right now, that doesn't employ the complication loop. Because the Powered by the Apocalypse styles does it, the Forged in the Dark ones do it. Most of the kind of the major narrative systems I played usually have that in there. So if you're looking for kind of a system light version, one that kind of embraces the fiction where you can kind of still build your PCs kind of along the more success failure options, this is a great way to do so. Kind of make your PCs feel competent, while still be able to kind of keep that narrative flow going. So that one's a good rose on that one. I'll say it's a situational rose depending on your aspect or your viewpoints on how the complication system works. One of the other roses, kind of switching gears here, and you'll see this if you go through the core rulebook. It really encourages kind of the collaboration between players and game masters to build out the world that they'll be bringing in. Like, there's so many resources on there. I think I mentioned it in the live play. This is one that your session zero could take like 2 sessions as you go through and work to build the world together and kind of build your characters out together, build your interactions together. Like, there's so much that goes into that, and it goes into it in a fun way. Like, for the mechanical aspects, building a player, a character, you can do that like 5 minutes. But going through and fleshing out your character, how they belong in the world, and how they belong with this party of people, is a fun thing that this system does and provides a lot of cool guidance in that conversation. So I think if you're a table that likes to kind of really build together, this is the system that can support that. Especially with it being a general system too, it's one that you can kind of get a feel for how that conversation goes, especially the more you do it, I think the more it'll click, and kind of the more interesting scenarios and situations you and that your table will be able to build out. So major roles for kind of the flexibility and kind of that conversational style that the system employs. Uh, Another big thing too, and this kind of goes along with the great advantage piece, but this system does a good job of encouraging teamwork by kind of creating those additional situational aspects and kind of having those different aspects and kind of the different pieces that play into that. I think it does a great job of encouraging teamwork, kind of encouraging players to kind of work together to create those advantages and get those buffs when they really need to, and really kind of encourages them not just on the teamwork side, but encourages them to tie, especially with invoking the aspect and having to kind of bring out how that aspect, whatever you're doing, plays into that aspect. I think it encourages players to kind of get into the narrative a little bit more. I think this one would be a really good one, a good bridge system for kind of getting people that are more used to maybe a more mechanical play style and may not be as comfortable role playing. Kind of getting them into that mindset, kind of getting that story first viewpoint, because just how the invoking those aspects work and how kind of much teamwork can go into creating those advantages and setting up other moments for big success. I think it would be a great first step or kind of a great introduction into that style of play. So the huge rows on that side, I think that's it can always be hard to bridge either way from coming from narrative to mechanic or going to more mechanical style and vice versa. I like that this one kind of allows you to kind of bridge into that pretty easily. But overall, those are my key roses for the system. I liked this one. It's quick to pick up, easy to play, and just really has some cool mechanical pieces that encourage the storytelling. But with that, let's get into some of my thorns. I didn't have a ton for them, but there are a couple ones I wanted to kind of highlight here. The first one, and I'll caveat this with saying, is they've already fixed it. But if you do buy the Fate Core system, and Evil Hat Productions does kind of advertise as kind of the starting point for Fate, the core rulebook Untouched is arrayed a little bit atrociously. What I've found, kind of doing some research and playing a little bit with Accelerated, is both Fate Accelerated and Condensed are a little bit easier to read and kind of get a good gist of the rules. Accelerated in particular, Condensed, they kind of just array it a little bit differently. So if you are kind of looking to get into, I'd recommend checking out one of those two. The core system itself is still pretty easy to get into. It's just kind of a lot of flipping back and forth. I found you can even, if you watch our mechanics video, you can see how much we went back and forth, different aspects. To kind of put it in order, at least that made sense to me, and your mileage may vary there. But for the core system itself, Big Thorn is it is a little bit hard to read or a little bit hard to comprehend the way it's arrayed. But Evil Hat has fixed that with the accelerated version, which I would recommend, or the condensed version too. Other big things with this too, and this one's a thorn, and this is just kind of a. I'll say this is a thorn for depending on your viewpoint. It's a general system, and sometimes mechanics can feel vague. They're intentionally vague on that side because they want to be able to be transformed to the genre that you're playing in. Some people may like that. Some people may think that's the rose. Some people may think that's thorn. I wanted to call that out here too, just to kind of make sure, especially if you haven't played Fate and kind of see if it's a system for you. Just kind of see kind of do like almost a little self-reflection and kind of how you view the mechanics and how them being tied into kind of the genre and the narrative fits for you. Because this gives a lot of tools for the game master and crew to tweak it. But if you're looking for that tweaking to be done out of the box, you may feel a little disappointed there. It may feel like it's a little bit too vague and too open-ended on your viewpoint. Kind of going alongside with that too. Uh, this system, as I said, it encourages a lot of collaboration between the players and the game masters. A lot of the things that some game masters may do kind of before session zero, kind of setting the stage for the world, the genre, the story they're trying to tell. It depends if you play it rules as written will be decided during that session zero with those conversations between players. So a thorn that potentially could be, depending on your group, is it may be may feel like it puts too much work on the game master and players to kind of tailor out the system, tailor out the objectives of the earth, build the genre, the narrative that you want to put onto this system. Because it's not one that kind of immediately calls out the genre it's looking to play. It's not one that has kind of the setting already built in. That is kind of for the game master and players to do. And it really encourages a collaborative style in doing so, which may work great for some tables, but for other tables that may be a little bit more GM driven, it could be a hard adjustment for. So those are my thorns overall. It's a good system, easy to play, easy to learn. And if you like generalist systems or narrative systems, this will be a great fit for you. The last big thing I'll touch on before we wrap is the kind of things I'm excited for in the future, the buds. And this is one because we brought in a guest, GM Spirit. If you've watched him on Pandemonium as Agni Jeet, he got to GM. It was a fantastic session on that side. And I got to play it the accelerated version last year at Gen Con. One of my big buds is trying to GM this myself. It's one I wasn't sure if I want to do it in person so I can do the cue cards, but I hate my writing. I'll probably copy Spirit eventually, do a virtual session with it using a whiteboard, just so you can kind of easily go in there and see all the different aspects are right out there and have that good visual. And actually, I didn't even look at the virtual tabletop. Some of the virtual tabletops, even Foundry, may do a good job of kind of laying out those aspects in a clear and easy to read way. But that's on my list. It's a bud for me in the future is to get a chance to kind of throw myself behind the GM screen and see how this system runs from behind the screen. But overall, like the system. I said, if you like narrative systems, if you like journalist games, you like having those conversations with your players at the table to build out the world that you're going to be telling your stories in, I think this would be a great fit for you, especially if you're not a big fan of the complication style that kind of PBTA and Forge in the Dark favor. I go back and forth on it personally because sometimes it's nice just to get that clean success in there and kind of keep everything moving. I can feel like the complication loop can kind of just keep looping and looping, and it takes the game master to kind of pull you out of it. But sometimes those complications to be fun and just add different narrative wrinkles. So it's one that I get torn on, and I think having a mix of systems that offer both is probably the best way to do it. So I'm really happy that Fate kind of offers a narrative system without that complication flow. But overall, there's kind of a quick look there. Shout out in the comments some things you like about the Fate system, or even your own roses, thorns, and buds about Fate. I would love to see what you all think in the community. And with this, since it's about halfway through January, we're going to be playing catch up through January. I've realized there's a couple systems we didn't put our review out for, so stay tuned. We'll be doing Coyote and Crow, as well as the Fallout TTRPG, and kind of capping those off with reviews of the systems since we've already run through and played them. And we'll be getting back into February with a brand new tabletop RPG. And we've got a fun one for this. I don't want to spoil it yet, but stay tuned with some news on that side. But overall, thank you all for hanging out. Shout out some of the things you enjoyed in the comments, and we'll see you all next time.